Hey everyone, welcome back to Shop Life. In this quick video, I'm going to go over what to do if your car doesn't start, and this will just help you diagnose and maybe even troubleshoot and maybe even repair it without having to get your car towed anywhere or spending a lot of money. So first things first, if you just finished doing some work on your car and now the car's not starting, chances are that it's something that you did. Either you forgot to hook something back up, maybe even the battery if you had disconnected it, or some kind of connectors or anything like that. So obviously go and backtrack first and just try to see if there's anything that you forgot to do. Besides that, let's just go through with the video and just go over the most common issues. So there's a couple of different ways that your car might not start. So if the car still makes noise like it's trying to start, if it's cranking, that means your car is cranking but it's not turning over. Now if your car, when you turn the key, nothing happens, there's no power in the car or anything like that, there's no lights turning on, then chances are it's probably a battery related issue. If you try to turn the car on and it sounds like it's very weak, like it tries to crank over or makes a little bit of noise but doesn't really do it all the way, chances are your battery is still weak. Another thing is if your car turns on but then dies right away, that's a different way of the car not starting, which technically it did start but it's not staying running. So let's just go over the first few things always to check. Is obviously the battery. The battery is the most common issue when it comes to cars not starting. So it could just be a weak battery, it could be the terminals that are attached to the battery. Make sure all those terminals are nice and tight, there's no corrosion in there. And if the battery is weak, sometimes you can get away with jump starting the car, and that's something that you should always carry in your car, are high quality jumper cables. Make sure they're thick gauge, that way you can jump it properly and have enough power going to it. Also battery related issues, if you had left something on, the battery just got a little weak, just jump starting should be able to take care of that. Now let's say that you put a brand new battery in since your car wasn't starting, and when you turn the key, still nothing happens. The lights and everything come on, but nothing is happening. What you should check first is your starter. One way to check it is make sure first just go through all the fuses, relays, make sure those are all good. You can figure out the information on that in your user's manual or owner's manual for your car. And then if that's all the fuses and everything are fine, if you have easy access to the starter, you can try lightly tapping it while someone cranks the car from inside. You can use like a wooden mallet or anything like that. Just lightly tap it, you don't need to go crazy with it. Sometimes that'll free it up enough for it to turn on. Now if you hear some kind of whining noise when you try to crank the car, like not cranking but just like the starter motor just whining, or something grinding inside like in the engine area, chances are that the starter is still bad. It's usually just that section that pushes, the section that turns the flywheel. If that's bad, you might just hear some noise just spinning. Sometimes it might even crank, and that just means that you need a new starter. Now if you turn the key and literally nothing happens, no clicking, nothing, and the battery is good, and you're pretty positive that the starter is fine as well, make sure you try a different key. Because sometimes the transponder in some of these keys, the transponder, which is what communicates with the anti-theft system on your car, if that is not being recognized, so something might have got damaged in the key, your car's not going to start because the car thinks that it's a different key, so it won't let any power go to the fuel pump or anything like that. So try another key. That sometimes solves the issue as well. And now let's move on to the car cranks, but it's not starting. So the first and most common issue with that is going to be either low gas, so you have no gas in the car, or your fuel pump went out. So a quick and easy way to check for that is to just try to listen to where the fuel pump is on your car. Whenever you turn the key, before you turn it all the way, so whenever you have it in ignition mode, usually the fuel pump will prime a little bit, and you should be able to hear like a rush of gas or just that electric motor just turning on for like 10-15 seconds. Here's the noise for the fuel pump when it primes before you turn the car on. And that should let you know that fuel pump is working. Another way you can do that is if you have a multimeter, go back wherever your fuel pump is and just check the power lids, make sure it's getting power. And obviously also check fuses, relays for that as well. Now if you know that your fuel pump is getting power, another thing that might also occur is if the fuel pump is not producing enough, if the fuel pump doesn't have enough pressure to start the car. Sometimes what you can do is remove your mass airflow sensor, which is right after your air filter, and spray some kind of starting fluid. If you don't have anything else, but you can also spray brake cleaner, which is also flammable. And if that lets the car start up, that means that it's just weak fuel pressure, and that's the issue. Now, if you're getting fuel or you've tried with the brake cleaner, and even then when you crank, nothing happens, it just stays cranking but doesn't turn over, make sure you check out your crank sensor. Usually, whenever the crank sensor goes bad, this is also known as a crankshaft sensor, whenever that goes bad, you should have a check engine light for it usually. So just scan the car's computer and see if there's any crankshaft related codes and go from there. Now, if your car starts up like every couple times, so like, it'll crank for a little bit, but it doesn't start, and you do it like 4 or 5 times and then it turns on, chances are your camshaft position sensor is going bad. And for that, you can also check the codes, see if there's anything stored for that, and it should let you know which sensor it is. Another reason that could also happen is if your fuel filter is clogged up or weak fuel pressure, but there's still enough to start the car. That's why it took a few tries for it to turn on. Now, let's say you were driving the car, everything's just normal, and the car just turns off by itself without any warning. And then you try to turn it on, nothing happens. First thing you want to check is your battery terminals and also the ground terminal, because what can happen is while you're driving, usually what turns the car off or makes it cut off while it's in motion is going to be a weak ground, and that's usually going to be at the battery terminal. If your battery is located in the trunk, just check the terminals in your engine bay as well as the battery terminals. Now, if you were driving and you saw your red battery light come on your gauge cluster at any point in time before the car started having starting issues, one of the possibilities is that your alternator went bad, which possibly took out the battery as well. So make sure you check your alternator. There are ways to test it once you've got your car started. The quickest and easiest way is once the car is running, just take off the positive terminal while the car is running. If the car cuts off right away, that means the alternator is bad, but if it stays running, that means the alternator is doing its job. That should be used with a disclaimer. If you're not very familiar with the car and if you don't want to take any risk, definitely don't do that. Just take it to somebody and let them check it out. Now, if you haven't driven your car in a long time and you didn't take any precautionary measures like a battery tender or putting some kind of fuel stabilizer in the fuel tank, that can also cause issues starting. Chances are, if it's just a battery issue, you can put another battery in and you should be able to start the car up. But if it's really bad gas or anything like that, you might have to empty your fuel tank. Or your fuel pump could have also got gummed up, which is why it's not, releasing as much fuel as it should. So in those cases, you might have to, do a little bit more work to drain the fuel tank. You can use the fuel pump to drain it, or you can, pull out the fuel pump and use some kind of multi-use transfer pump and transfer all that gas out and then put fresh gas. Now, besides that, now some more advanced issues that can cause the no start issue. If you have an automatic, make sure that your gear lever is in park. Make sure the transmission realizes it's in park. Usually you can just check your gauge cluster and see what gear the car is saying it's in. If it's not in park, you can try to wiggle around the shifter and see if that gets it to turn on. And if that does, then chances are that gear shifter itself is just bad or a sensor relating to it. Now, if you wiggle around your ignition column and you're able to get the car to start, that could also be an ignition switch issue or the tumbler itself, or it could be, like I said, a transponder issue with the key itself. Now, if you have a manual car, most newer manual cars, they have a safety switch into the clutch pedal that doesn't allow you to start the car until your clutch pedal is pushed all the way in. So in that case, just check the wiring on that clutch pedal switch. Make sure everything's plugged in, there's no damage on there, make sure it's making somewhat of a contact, and then try to turn the car on and see if that helps. Usually in those cases, the car will not do anything when you try to turn it on. It shouldn't make any noise or anything, just the lights will pop up. Now, on newer cars, the more recent cars, if you have the push button start, sometimes the battery in the key itself goes weak and doesn't allow the key to be detected, so your car won't turn on. And some of those cars actually require you to press the brake pedal in order for you to turn the car on. So if your brake pedal switch is messed up, it won't allow you to turn the car on. A quick and easy way to check that is put the car in ignition or accessory mode and press the brake pedal, make sure the brake lights are turning on in the back. And that pretty much rules out that brake switch, but also check any other wiring and fuses related to that. Now, if I missed anything, make sure you guys leave a comment down below to help out anybody else that's searching, on this video, trying to figure out why their car's not starting. So, thank you guys for watching. If you guys do need any work done on your car, or if you need any help, make sure you message me on Instagram at ShopLifeTV. That's gonna be your quickest way to get a response. Even then, I get tons of messages a day. You know, sometimes it'll take me a little bit longer. I do have to run the shop during the day. But anyways, thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.